Hi, everybody, and welcome to the God Place. My name is Cynthia. The God Place is simply finding your joy, your peace, love here on earth. And right now, things are pretty chaotic. I have a very good new friend. Her name is Leigh Dundas. And let me tell you about Leigh. Leigh is a human rights attorney and abolitionist dedicated to preserving basic freedoms while also combating global injustices like child slavery and the peddling of medical tyranny disguised as progress. Leigh's career spans 3 decades, commencing with her representation of Fortune 500 companies in high-dollar courtroom battles, and I've seen her do that. It's pretty awesome. In the early 90s, which focus changed to humanitarian work nearly a decade ago when she joined an anti-slavery NGO as their general counsel. Wow, that's pretty impressive. So Leigh, today let's talk to the people who are saying, what is going on? What is going on? Okay.
Well, I think thanks for having me. First of all, it's really important that the word gets out, and it's only through these types of platforms that the word can get out. I come, as you just mentioned, from a background of working for Fortune 100, 500 companies, including chemical companies. I was an environmental lawyer at large law firms here in California, which basically means you're not representing Greenpeace. You're representing the people who are polluting the planet. And I can tell you, having done that work for a long time, those large companies that make chemicals on this planet are not in it to save you or your body or your soul. They're in it to make a dollar at the expense, if they have to, of your health, of your well-being, be it emotional or physical. So I come from that side of the fence where it was a little bit ugly, and you got to see the inner workings of how these companies would try to be held accountable by the people that they were harming or had harmed, and our job was to make sure they walked free of that liability. It wasn't a good thing in my universe. I do believe in the justice system. I believe every client, whether it's criminal or civil, deserves to tell their side of the story, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I should be part of telling a story that I am not okay with. And at heart, I'm a save the whale, hug a tree, want to see the redwoods be living well past my lifetime for my kids and grandkids and their grandkids to go walk through, on the California coast. And so it wasn't really a good fit for me from that perspective, but it was a very good training ground. And so I come at what's going on the planet right now with a very inside look at what the other side is trying to do to us, and knowing that their modus operandi, if you will, is not necessarily honorable or exactly what they spin it to be like for the press and for all of us, And then I switched from that, as you mentioned, to doing anti-slavery work. And basically, I was general counsel, meaning usually you pencil whip a lot of desk work for an organization legally, but that was just only in name. I was actually living part-time during many of the months out of the year in Southeast Asia, where I was running undercover crews of former Navy SEAL, former SWAT type guys into child brothels. And we were amassing intelligence on who the bad guys were that were running those brothels, which mafia syndicates were in charge of running the brothel trade in the various towns in Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, neighboring regions, and getting intel so we could put the bad guys away, both those who were selling children for sex to sex buyers and the pedophiles who were buying those children from America, from Australia, from Germany, from Southeast Asia, and interfacing as I went along with law enforcement, both here and abroad, to apprehend those bad guys. So that was also sort of a good training ground, because you got, you're not going to sue the Yakuza Japanese mafia that's working one town south of Pattaya, Thailand, in the child brothel industry. You're not going to sue them in Thailand into submission. You're not going to go pull on the apron strings of your nearest policeman and say, oh, this bad thing is happening, sir, please do something about it. Because in Thailand, on a scale of corruption, they rank 4 out of 5. They're one of the most corrupt police forces, law enforcement agencies operating in Thailand that you could possibly have. So basically what the cops do is they work 9 to 5 for the city or the state, and then they go home at night and they moonlight for the brothel so that they can make enough money to send their kids to private school and not have them have to be sold into the brothel trade because they're so poor. So that's how that whole thing works. And I'm working in countries that are either currently communist or were recently communist. Laos is currently communist. Cambodia had a communist overthrow of their government in the late 1970s when I was a child under the direction of Pol Pot. He was a dictator. He came into town. He rounded up all of the white-collar workers in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants, the teachers. And he said, oh, you're going to go out into the fields. Communism's coming to town. It's a great thing. It's going to make everybody equal and everybody happy. Well, the way that's the forward-facing front of communism. You're going to live on a commune and everybody's going to get along and you're all going to be equal and have nothing. But really, there's always unpleasant elements in every society that want to rise to the top of the heap. In capitalism, it's allowed, it's encouraged as long as you do it legally. In countries that espouse communism, there's still that desire, that urge. And what happens is it becomes it's a different face of that coin, a very ugly manifestation. So you end up with people who are still in power, right? And then you have a class of people who are oppressed, and they're equal only in the sense that they're equally poor. And so they said to these white collar workers, you're going to go out into the fields and you're going to go be a peasant farmer and you're going to like it, right? Kind of like Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum that's at work in our century right now, saying you're going to own nothing and be happy, right? So out into the field they went, and really what the communist leaders were trying to do is get rid of any intellectual capital or anybody with money, because those are the two biggest threats to them overthrowing the Cambodian people and having a genocide occur, is people who have money and resources and talent to push back against this communist dictatorship that was coming to town. So they sent these people out into the fields saying it was just going to be for a couple weeks. And they believed initially what was being told to them. Oh, it's just going to be for a few weeks. It's for our own good. We're going to go out into the country. It's not what we're used to. We don't know how to farm because we're an accountant, but we're going to, we believe our government. So we're going to do this.
Exactly. Wow.
And they went out and they were shot face down into shallow graves. And to this day, when the rains come into Cambodia, it will raise the bones from the graves that were there 47 years ago in what is now known as the killing fields of Cambodia. So without getting too dark, what I want to say is I work and live amongst people, and have on and off for the last decade, amongst people who know what communism is, who know how tyrannical totalitarian regimes come into town and how it looks like one thing and then it becomes another thing. And what I will say is, to a man and to a woman, all of these people have been sounding the alarm. Every immigrant I know, from Venezuela to Poland to Southeast Asia, every person I know who still lives in Southeast Asia, are saying, you need to wake up. There is something horrendous happening to our country, and it's not what it appears to be. So for the last 2 years, since March of 2020, I've been looking at the writing on the wall and perhaps seeing it earlier and differently than many would, because I work amongst people who already had this happen to them once this lifetime and who survived it.
Wow. What you said about they thought everything was going to be fine, and then it wasn't. I think the one problem that we're having right now, Leigh, is most Americans this morning had a warm shower, they're fed, they haven't felt the pain. They haven't felt the pain, and they have completely been trusting our government. So many people trust the media. The media won't lie to us, right? And now there's little hints. People are starting to kind of wake up and say, wait, something's not right here. Something's not right here. Let's talk to those people right now, because I know a lot of them.
Yeah, your instincts are right, and you should always trust your instincts. And if you want a really good read, there's a book that came out, heck, I was in college, so over 3 decades ago. It's authored by Gavin D. Becker, Debecker. And he breaks down, it's called The Gift of Fear. And he breaks down how your instincts are actually not just a gut feeling. It is your brain processing 1 million pieces of data in 1 to 2 seconds that is saying, that person pulled up too close to me at the ATM and they said something that didn't make sense. And now there's a blur behind my left shoulder, and every part of your body is screaming at you, run, run, run away. And you're like, but it's 2:00 and I'm in LA in front of my B of A ATM. Why would I run away? And when they dissect these people, the one person who escaped the serial killer like Ted Bundy, the one person who escaped the Golden State Killer, the one person who escaped the serial rapist or the serial robber or bank robbers, when they ask that person, walk me through what happened on the day whatever occurred, they will, the person will do a data dump. Oh, well, this happened. And then the next thing that happened that I noticed was this. Oh, I'd forgotten I noticed that. And I forgot I noticed that. And what Gavin de Becker realized is your brain has come upon a gone with the wind size amount of information, all in the span of a second, 2 seconds, maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes at most. And it doesn't have time to walk you through the Gone with the Wind treatise of A to Z, why all of these little different pieces of data points that are coming into you and all these pieces of criteria are basically telling you something is wrong. It doesn't have time to convince your left brain in a very logical, laid out, jury trial, lawyerly kind of way why you should run away right now. So what it does is it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up and it goes, run. And the people who run or finally listen to the gut instinct that maybe they overrode the first time, which is how they ended up in the trunk of the serial killer, but now they're not going to override their second gut instinct that says run as soon as he opens the trunk or whatever it is. Those are the ones that get away and live to see another day. So your gut instinct is there to save you. And it's actually not just this woo-woo feeling in your solar plexus. It is a physiological feeling that is trying to keep you alive based on legitimate criteria that your brain can explain to you later, 5 days from now when the police interview you, but it doesn't have time to do that right now or you're going to end up dead. So that's a really long tangent of me saying, go read the book, The Gift of Fear. It's a fascinating read. There's another great book out there called The Culture Code. And I forget the author on that one, but he goes through and analyzes what makes outliers who succeed. Why is the one basketball team that is ranked 300 out of 400 suddenly winning the championship this year and every year afterward? Why is that one Navy SEAL team, SEAL Team 6, why are they able to take out the Osama bin Ladens of the world? Why is the one class with that one teacher in East LA in Compton teaching kids who can't read and write calculus such that they're getting into Harvard, and all the other teachers can't seem to teach them how to think their way out of a paper bag? What makes that group succeed? And one of the most interesting things he talks about in that book is they did an experiment where they put negative Nancy type people into a group. So they put a small group together, 4 or 5 people that don't know each other, and they're given a task to complete. And it's a doable task, whatever it is, devise a business plan or come up with a marketing idea, whatever it is. And they put a bad egg into the one group. And it could be an Eeyore type, oh, I'm so depressed, nothing ever works. Or it could be a slacker. Hey, dude, the waves were awesome this morning. Sorry, I arrived 20 minutes late. What are we doing today? I'm here for the team, but he's not really there for the team because he's a slacker. But he's saying he is, but he's not really. And I forget what the third category was, but they're the bad egg.
Right.
And there was one guy who was tasked, he was an actor, with being the bad egg. And he would go into these groups and uniformly, regardless of which type of bad egg role he was inhabiting for that group, he would drop the group's productivity 40% on average versus groups that were put together without his bad egg influence, except for one group that remained almost impervious to all of his attempts to bring him down in his character that he was playing that day. And he found himself almost unwillingly coming out of character and wanting to help the group succeed. And so the experimenter was like, why is that group succeeding over the top of the bad egg, right? And they analyzed the leadership of the de facto leader that had risen to the top in that group. And then they break down all of the things he does innately with body language, with good acknowledgments, good communication, bringing them into the fold, even when they're a down and out negative Nancy or a slacker type. So it's a really good read. It's called The Culture Code, and you should absolutely read it, and you should read it to your children. But getting back on track, you should listen to your gut instinct because that is what kept us alive. in prehistoric times. So the Neanderthals that were sitting around the campfire, the ones that paid attention to the rustling in the bush and ran away from it, they outran the saber-toothed tiger. And the ones who went, oh, I'm sure it's nothing, and overrode their gut instinct, well, they were an appetizer dish for, a saber-toothed tiger that day. So what's going on in America right now is you cannot trust the media. And this is not a conspiracy theory. I want you to go Google. You don't even need to go to DuckDuckGo, which is a more reliable search engine. You can just go to Google, and you can Google up a guy by the name of Frank Church. He was a congressman in the 70s, and the Church Committee hearings in Congress. And these were hearings that looked into CIA tactics that had been deployed over the preceding 2 decades, that were nefarious tactics that the CIA actually used on us, our own people, not foreign countries. And what he discovered when the CIA investigated is there was a project called Project Mockingbird. And when Nazi Germany era ended, and we did the Nuremberg trials to hold the war criminals who baked people in ovens, baked Jewish people and my ancestors and their friends, the Romani. There was a Romani Holocaust as well as a Jewish Holocaust that Hitler perpetrated. When we got those guys held accountable, we didn't get them all. And there was a secret operation that our government and others undertook at the time called Operation Paperclip, where they didn't want to get behind in the arms race, because this was during the era of the development of the nuclear bomb was coming in, right? And so we poached some of those brilliant but evil scientists, right, and bad guys out of Nazi Germany, and they came to South America, and they came to North America, they came to Canada and the US and places in other places in Europe to keep us moving forward on our arms race and other things. So we did that at the end of World War II. That was the late 1940s, early 50s. And in the early 50s, coincidentally or not, the CIA, I believe it was in 1951, undertook a secret project called Operation or Project Mockingbird, where they sought to pull journalists out of mainstream media outlets, both print, newspapers, and journalists, broadcast journalism like TV and radio, and have them work for the CIA. And conversely, they had CIA agents that they wanted to put into journalistic entities. Why were they doing this? Why were they establishing such a close relationship? They wanted to control the narrative for our own good. Be very careful, as Ronald Reagan said, when the government shows up and tells you it's for your own good. Mm-hmm. And they did this through the 50s, through the 60s. And the Church Committee got a hold of it and said, what the heck is going on? You were basically drowning America in PR that was spun to a certain narrative that the CIA wanted to deploy. And it's a real thing. And what they found during the Church Committee hearings is at least 50 journalists, big names at the time, Stuart Alsop, Time Magazine, were part of this. Alfred Hayes, I think was his name. I mean, these were the guys, right? Of that era. And then Rolling Stone came along a couple of weeks later and said, nice try, Congress. It was actually more like 400 different people were involved in this. And the CIA was controlling the mainstream media. I would encourage you, there's a clip out there, and I ran a shortened clip of it in a Clay Clark speech I did either in San Antonio or Dallas at the end of last year, November or December. Mm-hmm. So if you Google Leigh Dundas and Clay Clark Reawaken America tour in Dallas or San Antonio, I ran this clip. But it's a bunch of little talking heads from today. And it's newscasters from Detroit to Texas, from LA to New York City. And they fill you the screen. And so it's one little person saying this, and then it's two little people saying this, and then it's 3, and then it's 16, and then it's 24. And pretty soon the whole screen, there's 50 different newscasters saying the exact same thing at the exact same time. And I'm talking, this is last year. You can't watch that clip and tell me true unless you're high or dumb or dead, that our media is not being controlled. It is being heavily controlled right now. And to what end? How did Nazi Germany get to be Nazi Germany? I'll tell you, the first darn thing Hitler did when he wanted to overtake Germany, he did a false flag event. He burned the Reichstag building, blamed it on the communists, said, oh, the communists are coming to town. We need to change all of our laws to protect ourselves from the communists. That was a false flag. He was saying one thing and doing another. He changed 400 laws over 6 years to enable his ulterior motive, his real agenda, which was to hunt down Jewish people, non-Aryan people, and burn them alive in ovens. But what he said is it's for our own good. It's to protect us from the commies because they burned a building. They burned a government building. BS. He burned that building, blamed it on the commies, used it as a reason to change laws so he could lock down a society. be very aware of the false flag, right? This is not Nazi Germany, not on our watch, not on my watch. My father and grandfather and husband and his father did not fight in the U.S. Armed Forces. My grandfather was on the deck of the USS West Virginia on December 7th of 41 when it was suicide bombed out from under his feet. I was a girl and I knew it, and it didn't matter in my family. My father and my grandfather died before I was born, but those people in that legacy said, you go down with your boots on. You don't say die. You don't think, oh, I'm just one person. You don't cry yourself a pity party. You get sad. You do sad for a minute, then you move to mad. There's a lot more action and energy in mad.
Absolutely.
Sad, you get out here. You're sad because you're checking social media on your sofa and trying to feed your kids and help with homework. Let me tell you something. Go on social media, get a little bit of data to know what's coming down the pike, and get the hell off. They are brainwashing you too. They are brainwashing you too. And if you were okay and now you're feeling like crying, you have been on social media 1 minute too long. Your only asset in this war of no bombs is your emotional tone level and your ability to be active and gather data and use it smartly and intelligently to protect your family. So you get the data and you get the hell off before it can warp your mindset. And if it did warp your mindset, there's a handle for it. Go take your vitamins, go get outside, go get on your treadmill, even for 15 minutes. 1 minute out of every 3, you run on the treadmill. High intensity training, 15 minutes, makes your insulin resistance come down and does as much for you as actually working out for an hour does. So if you don't have time to go take an hour walk in the sun, which is preferable, go get on your treadmill that's all dusty like mine that you can see behind me here, and jog for a minute, have everything bounce that shouldn't bounce, pant like you've lost your lung for 2 minutes, and then jog again on minute 4 and on minute 8. And when you get to minute, every third minute, and when you get to 15, go take a shower and you'll feel better. And then say, how am I going to do something today? You are in the fight of your lives. You are in World War III, and it is a more dangerous world war than we've ever had because there are no bombs going off. Right. You can change it. We, the power of the people, always win.
Yes.
The fact that you guys are talking, proof positive. Every time the planet flirts with doing itself in and tyrannical, baking of people in ovens, eventually the good people wake up and go, what the hell? We don't want to bake in ovens. We're going to just tell Hitler no. Guess what? Nazi Germany never would have happened if all the Germans just stood up the very first day and said, no, we're not putting our neighbors in a ghetto and making them wear weird stuff on their arm and flash a passport. That's another sign this is bad news. When was the last time we thought separate was equal? Oh, that was before the civil rights era. Separate ain't equal. Our Supreme Court said it. Why are we making second-class citizens? Why are we saying you have to flash papers to go into restaurants in San Francisco? You go. You have the power. The power is within each of us. All you have to do is believe it. I had a bookmark on my door in 6th grade with a unicorn on it that said some things must be believed to be seen. And then next to it, I had handwritten Goethe's quote, whatever you believe you can do or think you can, begin it. Boldness has genius and power and magic in it. Just start. I don't care that you don't know that you're nobody or think you're nobody. You are somebody. You don't know what you're doing. Nobody did. I had never been to a board meeting. I got scared. I got nervous. My voice shook the first time I did it too. Do it anyway. Do it anyway, and we win.
Well, when you come from your heart, you can't lose. And when you absolutely know that fear is an illusion, and say to the enemy, I like to call it the enemy, when you say to the enemy, you have no power here. I am one with divine love, and you have no power here. That's a good place to start. That's a good place to start, because so many people, unless it shows up in their lap or shows up in their house or shows up where somebody's at the door with a gun wanting to take you or parts of your family or anybody away, until that happens, it happens to somebody else. And when it's happening to somebody else, let's go back to the Roman Empire or to the Colosseum. Nero was a brilliant dude. What he did was he would put all those people up there, and the guy down there, they had the power to do this. And the guy down, and they felt, when you feel like you have that kind of power, that you're playing God, because you can say that person lives or not, or dies. And that's what's happening right now. That's what's happening right now. People that are in control are playing God. Like we were talking about people who decide who lives or doesn't live.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, Cindy. Another thing I would encourage your viewers to do is, if they're not familiar with Stanley Milgram, they should get familiar with Stanley Milgram. He was a Yale University professor in 1961, and he wanted to figure out how Nazi Germany happened. And he thought, well, maybe it has something to do with our predisposition to be obedient to people in positions of authority over us. So he devised an experiment to test out his hypothesis. He was at Yale. He ran newspaper ads, advertising for people to just come in and be part of a psychology experiment. It was billed out as a memory experiment. And when these people off the street, I mean, and they had all comers, you know, it was janitors, it was accountants, it was teachers, it was students, it was retired folk, homemakers, you know, CEOs, anybody, right? So they come in, they sign up for the memory experiment, and they're paired up. So you and I would get paired up, and we'd be given a list of words to memorize, arbitrary words. So when I say birdhouse, you're supposed to say table. When I say shoe, you're supposed to say elbow. And we go through this pair of words, you know, the list of pairs of words, and when we've all fully memorized it, we're separated, and we're put into two separate rooms where I can't see you anymore, but I can hear you because I've got an intercom system. And I say, you know, bird bath or whatever, and you're supposed to say table. And instead you say giraffe. And when I get a wrong answer from you, I'm supposed to turn to this switchboard panel on the wall that has a bunch of little switches on it. And it's got voltages underneath it. So it goes from 9 volts all the way to 450 volts. And there's,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So for those of your audience who are like me and not very good at science, you know, 4 or 5, 9 volts, we've all licked a battery. It kind of zaps your tongue. It's not pleasant, but you live. 450 volts is a fatal dose of electricity. It's an electric chair dose. It's a fry the other person, it will kill you dose of electricity. So it's graduated. It raises it so many volts a switch all the way up, and there's a lot of switches. And so in the other person, you know, in the other room who's being tested has been wired with electrodes on their arms. So every time they give a wrong answer, I am supposed to turn to the wall and flip a switch to give you a shock to negatively reinforce your wrong answer. And again, we were told it was a memory experiment. Will negative aversive zapping of the person cause them to remember things more? That's not what it actually was. The experiment was designed to test people's obedience. So you weren't the one being studied for your wrong answers. I was the one being studied for my obedience. So as I'm zapping you with higher and higher voltages every time you got a wrong answer, I had to do the next step up, right? I'm hearing pre-recorded sounds from your end of the table, right, where you're in the other room. And the first thing I hear is, ugh, you know, as it gets higher in the voltage. And then I'm hearing, ow, dude, that really hurt. And then it's just abject screaming, you're going to kill me. I had a heart attack last year, and you're zapping me, and it's making my heart skip beats. I'm going to have another heart attack. So as you might imagine, this created a lot of cognitive upset and unhappiness and dissonance, right? I'm being told to do this, but my heart's telling me this is a bad thing. And so the person who was actually being studied, me, would turn, usually somewhere in the middle of the experiment after he's hearing screaming from the other room, turn to the guy in charge, a doctor in a white lab coat with the word Dr. So-and-so on his lapel. And he would say, dude, doc, I'm not comfortable continuing to zap my neighbor in there. He's screaming for his life. He sounds like he's going to die just because he gave me like a wrong answer. Like, this ain't cool. And for his part, the person in charge, a confederate of the actual, you know, the professor who was running the experiment, had been instructed just to say 3 simple words. You must continue. You got to continue. No gun to the head. You got to continue. You're not leaving until you finish this experiment. No locking of the door. You can't walk out of here. Just 3 simple words. You must continue. And the question was, what % of average law-abiding Christian, God-fearing American citizens would continue to flip switches up until a fatal dose of electricity and kill their neighbor in the other room over a wrong answer on a memory quiz? And by the way, I should mention at this point that the other person was not actually being shocked. I didn't know that. I thought he was because I was hearing pre-recorded screams, et cetera, but nobody was actually being injured. But I didn't know that. And so there I am, along with all these other people being experimented on. And you know, Stanley Milgram, for his part, he had gone to his colleagues in the psych department before he did this. and explained the notion of his new experiment. And they were like, dude, you're high. It's the 60s. What are you smoking, dude? Like, none of these people are going to continue to execute their neighbor just because you told them they had to continue the experiment. And when push came to shove and he ran all these people through the experiment, what he discovered is that 2 out of 3 Americans, 65.5%, I believe, 2 out of 3 Americans would execute their neighbor over a wrong answer on a memory test just because somebody in a position of authority said they had to do so.
Wow.
Be very careful
Wow.
of your predisposition to be obedient to what people tell you to do and that it's for your own good. We are hardwired to be obedient. And when our tribal leader said, run from the hairy saber-toothed tiger, that was a good thing. It saved our life for another day. When a guy coming through 1930s Germany says, you raise your hand and say Heil Hitler and goose step when I say so, not so good to be obedient to that guy. Be obedient to God, but you be very careful who else besides God you're obedient to, because we are hardwired to follow the leader, and it can be fatal.
Yes.
It can and will be fatal if you follow the wrong leader. And do not think for a second that just because it's happening over there, you don't need to be concerned with it. Just because you're living in Texas, you don't need to worry about these bad bills that my governor and the bad politicians in Sacramento are trying to force through my legislature. Do not think, oh, my kid's okay because my kid's school isn't masking. Who cares about those other kids' schools? Because that's their problem, not mine. Martin Luther King Jr. said it best when he said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Tyranny will find you if you don't help your neighbor fight it down. We are all interconnected. We are all one.
Oh, yeah.
When that is a problem over there, it is also a problem for you because they will come for you eventually. And your odds of winning are far better when you fight hard and you fight early. And on that note, I'm going to ask your viewers a hard lesson. Are you waiting for other people to fight for your freedom right now? Because the reason we're facing a second Holocaust is we didn't fully learn the lesson the first time. We did not. We waited for Churchill and FDR to get into the fight after they were forced to, after England was bombed and after Pearl Harbor, where my grandfather was hanging out on, the USS West Virginia. That's what got all of the other countries into the fight and finally fought Hitler down so that we're not all speaking German. But I don't think Sweden and South Dakota are coming to our rescue this time around.
Right.
This is a planetary Holocaust, a planetary tyranny, a planetary overthrow of our rights as basic human beings, not just our Constitution here in America and not just our country's ideals, but everywhere. Right. And if you think tiny little countries and tiny little states that are speaking out are going to save you, you're as high as Stanley Milgram's colleagues were. That ain't happening. This is going to end when you get in the fight. You need to donate something, your time, your money, both if you have it. I have not had a paycheck since March of 2020. And initially, I was fine with that. I was like, I'm going to go fight some battles, and then I'll go back to doing our for-profit 9-to-5 job. It ain't going to happen. This is the fight of our lives.
It is. It is. And thank you for your courage, and thank you for your leadership.
We need alternatives. These are the initiatives that I am forwarding. Again, it's freedomfighternation.org, but there's a lot of good people out there doing good work. You don't have to fund me. Do your research. Find a charity that's fighting for freedom or a person that's fighting for freedom that you like, because that's going to inspire you to continue to want to give your time, your resources, your money to, and do it. You don't have money, that's fine. You know how to do graphic design. You know how to do social media. You know how to do my accounting at the end of the year. Donate that. That's less time and money I have to spend getting that stuff done, and more time and money I can spend fighting for freedom, or whoever is the charity that you're helping, right? So that's how that works. I encourage you to get in the fight. You can and will make a difference. You already are. I'm going to end on a light note. We recalled 3 out of the 5, I think, bad board members in San Francisco because they were overly crazy and worrying about renaming Thomas Jefferson High School when they, instead of getting kids back on campus to actually learn, which is their mandate, like keep children in school so they can learn stuff. So even very liberal San Francisco, about a month ago now, recalled 3 of their 5 board members. And at the end of it, they had a drag queen come out in full drag. And this guy said to the mainstream media, he said, I know that mainstream media is going to spin this recall that we did. I mean, this was a landslide, by the way. They recalled him 72 to 78% based on which person it was. There wasn't, the lowest recall was 72%. The highest was almost 80%. Everybody in San Francisco was fed up. I mean, think about these numbers and think about the fact that probably 80% of the people voting were self-identified liberal progressives, right? So they were done. And this drag queen goes, but I know that CNN and MSNBC, they're all Channel 5, they're all going to say this was a Trumpster, whatever, recall. So I am here to correct the record. Do I look like a Trumper? You've gone too far. And I looked at that drag queen's comments and I looked at what had happened and I'm like, oh, game over. We're already won when you've got drag queens recalling San Francisco school board members. Guys, just keep up the good work. We're getting there.
Right. And just care. Just care. And start checking out alternative information.
Yep. Do your homework. Keep your blinders off. Keep your ear to the ground. Listen to the people who are speaking truth. Truth resonates at a certain frequency. And if you're looking for the truth, you'll know it when you hear it. It's the former Supreme Court standard on pornography. You'll know it when you see it. You'll know the truth when you hear it. And you'll also know a lie when you hear it. There's a disingenuous to it that makes you go, that doesn't sit right with me. So trust your gut on that, and go listen to the people who are telling the truth and fighting the hard fights, and help them out. Help out the people you resonate with, and we're going to get there. We're already getting there. And I can't wait to see the golden era that's going to come out of this, because every time we have one of these little episodes in history, when you get through the hard part, you come out with a golden era that's even better and more free and more awesome than it ever was before. There's so many things the government has not been getting out to us. Technologies, medically, they've been sitting on for decades. Amazing ways of communicating that they've been hiding from us. Amazing cures for diseases that they've been hiding from us, that are within our own ability to cheaply and for free half the time do, but it's just information that's been suppressed. So go find the information. Information is the new bullet in your proverbial gun. Fight the good war, speak your truth, protect your kids, and keep this great country free, because our forefathers didn't die in vain, and this is our job. We've ridden the coattails of the freedom they secured for the last 5 decades. The last time we saw active sustained conflict was in Vietnam. We've not had sustained conflict really since then, not even Iraq or Afghanistan, not very sustained war like we did in Vietnam or World War II. It's our turn, and we're up for the challenge. We're coming to the game late, so it feels like a bit of a hard slog, but we're going to get there. We always win. Good people always wins. Truth always wins. God always wins, and freedom always wins. So just know that, think with that, go outside, exercise, get some sunlight, wake up to fight another day, and we're getting there. And I can't wait to meet everybody who was on this side of the fence when we get through this and as we progress, because
and we're getting there.
We're the heroes we've been waiting for.
Freedom is the nature of the soul.
Yeah.
Freedom. Look at it. Yeah. Look at a 2-year-old that whips off their diaper and runs through the sprinkler, and you're a little bit jealous. You want to do that, right?
They love being free, and they don't care who's caring, and they'll dance naked in the sun, and they'll run after a little squirrel because they want to be free, and they want to hug and love everything they can get their hands on. And that is how we were born, and that is how a lot of us go to whatever is coming for us afterward, heaven and our meeting with our maker. And the job we have is to remain in that state between how we start and how we end, and we're getting there.
And one other suggestion I'd like to make: go out to the beach, go out in nature somewhere, and just marvel at that little acorn that became this gigantic oak, and know that power is on your side, your side, our side, waiting for us. All we need to do is say, thank you, God, for a peaceful world. I do that all the time. It's my mantra. That in itself has so much power. Because what happens when people appreciate, they give you more.
Yes.
I love it.
That has its own frequency: appreciation, recognition, acknowledging people's good work. We got to remember, you see somebody doing something good, give them a compliment. You know,
Yeah.
it's a rough enough world out here. Give them a compliment. Appreciate the right. When you appreciate the right, when you recognize the right, you see it in little kids. You pat them on the head, you tell them good job. You can see them get bigger and happier, and they're inspired to want to go do more good. Adults are the same way. We're a little crustier. We've been beaten down a little more. But if you say, hey, good job there, you can see the little inner smile start to come out, and that is how we get her done. So go do some good, go recognize some good in this planet. There's a lot of good out there. Keep your eye on the good ball. Make sure you weed out the bad eggs along the way, call them out. Convert the people in the middle that want to do good and just don't know what they're doing or where to find it yet. And we're getting there. And it was an honor to be here, my dear. Thank you for having me today on this program.
I love you, and I want to get you back. Thank you for your courage and your words and your power. And next time, we'll probably be further along than we are now. And
That's right.
And I'm excited. Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.
Honor was mine. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.